found support in a lot of areas during our grieving journey. I think, because the death of our son was so unexpected, there was, no indication that there was anything wrong with the pregnancy. I think initially we were really at a loss, to be perfectly honest. And we didn't receive much support in the hospital, unfortunately. There was some mention of a group at some point, and some literature provided, but really we on our own began to kind of research, knowing that I think we need some help. We very quickly started to research where to find help, where to kind of find people that were going through the same grief that we were, and trying to kind of understand what was happening, both physically and emotionally, because grief is just overwhelming. So we found RTZ Hope, and we joined the loss support group for that very shortly after Sebastian died. I think it was within the month. And that I really credit with really helping us to kind of start our grieving process, and really kind of understand, not only provide a space where we were able to be with other people who were experiencing the same grieving process, the same physical manifestations of grief, the same, having these stories and helping to share, and people that understood you were so horribly sad, but you also want to celebrate your child. I think that's a hard space for people that haven't had this happen to be in. So it was nice to be in that space, and to share him with other people. And we also knew nothing about how grief really physically, I mean, emotionally, you can imagine what happens, but also physically, I mean, everything that grief does to you is just nuts. It's nuts. And so I think that really started our journey in terms of thinking about, understanding what we were going through, and also probably what we were going to go through, and having us feel comfortable in that, I think, and not, it's still scary, but less scared, I guess, in a lot of ways. And we also, in that group, talked to people about professional therapy, and we were able to find a professional therapist who specialized specifically in infant loss, specifically. So that was extremely helpful. I can't stress that enough. That really helped. Now, the one thing that, the family building group that we were in, we were the only LGBTQ couple in the group, the only the same sex couple in the group. And while we certainly never felt any sort of discrimination, everybody was absolutely wonderful. It does help, I think, in some respects, to have a group that is people that have the same family makeup as you do, because there's so many things that can go. There's so many different types of grieving that can happen, and some of that type of grieving may be related specifically to me being a gay woman, and being a non-gestational partner. So it was my wife that had our son, and that kind of counterpart was not there for me. There were certainly other women that gestational, mothers, but a non-gestational mother was not part of that group. And, so being a woman and, being a non-gestational mother, I'm not a father, right? I'm not the gestational mother. And so that wasn't represented. And so that, I think, we've certainly there's actually not a lot of groups like that, which is kind of odd. That's one of the big issues, I think, and one of the big gaps within this kind of community that strives to help people like me that have gone through a loss. And so that was one thing I felt that, we kind of looked to elsewhere and talked with, other friends certainly about that. But really, by and large, I never really found a group. We never really joined any sort of, group that was specific for the LGBTQ community around infant loss. I think if we had, I think that there probably would have been a lot of the same things that we talked about, certainly in the group that I was in, but also other aspects of the process, maybe even other things that felt, discriminatory or something during the process, which is also kind of compounds that grief you're already feeling. And so I think that probably would have been helpful, but certainly we've kind of, talked with a lot of people about this over time. And I've gotten involved with groups like RTZ Hope, and kind of thinking about how to best you know, offer those kinds of support for LGBTQ community.